Grace to and peace from God our Creator and Christ our Redeemer. The temple officials did not set out to make the temple into a marketplace. We're quick to assign greed to their actions, but that doesn't help us, and it only leads to bigotry. We're also quick to assume malice in their intentions, but that only absolves us from looking too critically at our own actions. No, the religious leaders did not wake up one morning and decide that it was a good day to start a marketplace in the temple. Rather, it happened slowly, by degree. After all, the pilgrims coming to the temple wanted to make an offering, but the coins of Rome bore the image of the emperor, and that was idolatrous. These coins could never be allowed into the temple. Instead, they would need to be exchanged for temple coins, coins that were not covered in blasphemies, so that the offerings could be made. What's more, these same pilgrims wanted to offer sacrifices to God. After all, such sacrifices could only be offered here at the temple. But God demands the first fruits of our labors, and they understood that to mean that only animals without blemish were worthy of sacrifice. It was not, however, practical to travel great distances with sacrificial animals. So pilgrims needed a place to purchase animals ready and worthy for sacrifice once they arrived at the destination of their religious journey. So places were made for the dealers of doves and sheep and cattle. And then one well-intentioned rationalization at a time, the temple slowly turned into a marketplace. One rationalization at a time, it drifted further from its place as the holy habitation of God. If we truly hear this story, it should make us feel uncomfortable. It demands us to ask what it means for us to be the church of Jesus. Or perhaps more pointedly, it demands that we ask where and how we are failing to be Christ's church. This encounter with Jesus makes us uncomfortable because we do set out with the best of intentions. It makes us uncomfortable because it begs the question of our own cherished rationalizations. Where have we been led astray one well-intentioned rationalization at a time from the church that Jesus calls us to be? For a number of years in my former diocese, in addition to my parish work, I served as a consultant to churches in the transition process, especially with churches that had entered into a long-term transition as they worked through whatever issues they were struggling with and which prevented them from calling a new rector. St. George's Middlebury was one such parish in a period of transition and discernment. As the name suggests, they were located in the middle of the Bury section of Connecticut, surrounded by the likes of Waterbury and Woodbury, Southbury and Roxbury. And in many ways, they were like so many other churches with some good and life-giving ministries. For example, they held an annual gingerbread house village each year in the lead up to Christmas, and it is hard to overstate how big of an event this was. The entire parish hall was converted into a Christmas village with each house carefully and elaborately made out of gingerbread. People would come from far and wide to simply walk through the display, and some would even bid on particular houses. It was a major fundraiser for the church, after all. But St. George's was also facing gradual decline in numbers and a tightening of their finances. And they were located in a small rural town with few prospects for a significant turnaround. It was a church like so many others, except that it had a gun range in its basement hall. Now you might ask how a church ends up with a shooting range in its basement. I certainly did. And the answer is slowly, by degree. The church was located in a more conservative section of the state where issues of gun rights could be and were used by politicians to reinforce their voting base. St. George's was also in need of a long-term tenant to help provide a much-needed income stream for the parish. Here in Vancouver, that often means a preschool, but in rural Connecticut, in an aging town, preschools were not in high demand. What's more, several of the members of the congregation were also members of the National Rifle Association. And so, piece by piece, each step in the rationalization fell into place. The fact that the parish knew it would irritate the bishop and the rest of the diocese was merely icing on the cake for them, or gingerbread house, if you will. And so it was that on any given night of the week, a steady stream of cars came and went as people showed up at the range to practice their shooting in the church basement, even while parish council or Bible study or other church functions took place upstairs in the upper hall. Our cherished rationalizations are hard to see. They're hard to see because they are rationalizations, after all, in which we convince ourselves that we are doing the right thing, and because we hold them dear and truly believe the justification we have told ourselves. Perhaps this is part of what makes the gospel so troubling this morning, because we know that we cannot identify where we have gone astray. And if we cannot identify where we have gone astray, we cannot reform ourselves. And that, my friends, that is the truth of this encounter with Jesus in the temple, is that we cannot reform ourselves. We cannot make the temple holy again. We cannot sanctify ourselves. Only God can reform us. Only God can sanctify and redeem and make us holy again. The question is, how will we receive the one who has been sent to lead us back into right relationship? How will we receive the one who lays bare our cherished rationalizations? This is the important part. Because the religious leaders were not angry with Jesus after he cleared the temple and overturned the purses of the money changers. They weren't angry. Perhaps that strikes us as odd. Rather, they were curious. They were curious because they knew that God would send someone to reform and restore, and that included reforming and restoring the temple. Watching Jesus' actions, they could not help but wonder if Jesus was the one. So they asked for a sign. They asked for a sign so that they might know whether Jesus was the one God had sent, the one for whom they had been waiting. But the sign that Jesus gives them does not lead to belief for them, rather disbelief. Though interestingly, the sign does not lead the religious leaders to belief, but it does lead the disciples who are watching to belief. The question for us today, the question for the church in every age, is which will we be like? Will we be like the religious leaders who see the sign but do not believe and refuse to leave behind our cherished rationalizations? Or will we be like those disciples who witness the sign that Jesus gives and understand and are willing to be led back into right relationship with our God? Because the church is always in need of God's reformation. We know it, even if we cannot see how it is to be done. We know it even if we cannot see where it is needed through our haze of justifications and rationalizations. When Christ comes, and he will come, overturning our pews, shredding our canons, casting out our prayer books, how will we receive him? And will we believe?